quantifying this matter. So you go so much deeper when you really look at the whole teeth. In math, you can kind of just focus on the verbs. Okay, I know I'm doing decimals, so I know I have to compare them, I know I have to order them, I know I have to, you know, but.
Add, subtract, multiply,
Exactly, you know, but in science, you gotta look at the whole teeth. You can't just look at one little piece of the teeth.
But in science, you have to understand what those processes really mean.
Right.
And for the most part, except for my students, they're not taught in
No.
there. I mean, they came from the AAAS, American Association for the Advancement of Science, and they have very specific scientific meaning. When I hear teachers say, you're just observing, I just want to go, no, that is not what we do in science. It's never just observing. Observing is the heart of science, and it must be done properly. If the scientist does not make correct, proper observations, they will never answer their research question. So it's not just observing, and I think teachers do that because they've never done science. They've learned science from memorizing vocabulary, but they've never done scientific research. But anyway, I want to go back to the scope and sequence. So if you have one, if you can access one, that's what I ask you to bring. If you don't have it, try to get it. And if you can't get it, create your own. It won't matter if you have to go back to the district and they've got something that's a little bit different. You just will understand it a lot better because you've wrestled with your own. I'm back there reading your reflections, and they're always interesting. And I see where somebody said that they really had trouble understanding it until they had to wrestle with it, and then they finally got it. If we don't wrestle with ideas, we're not going to understand them. And if we expect it to be easy, we haven't really learned it. So, back to your horizontal alignment, and then you're going to start thinking about, okay, what is the best way to teach the integration of math and science? I've always thought, why is math why is measurement such a problem in math? Don't they measure? Well, measurement in math is not the same thing as I'm thinking measure is, okay? That's one thing, but the other thing is, and this is a question, and that's something that we would be interested in the research, are the mixed trained teachers, students score any better in measurement than the non-mixed trained teachers? I don't know. That would be a hypothesis I'd like to test by going into the data, by looking at the data. Okay, so now we have some individual questions. Lisa, did I answer yours about
Yes,
what
you
to
did.
do?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And so you had some questions. You want to go ahead and build on that? On any of the questions people asked you in the
I'm
break?
sorry, what's your name?
Camera.
Okay. Tamara was just asking, she had a little sparkle of an idea, and she was asking what I thought about it. That's what she asked about what to put into her. Do you want to talk about it? Because
What was the question?
My question was, because I'm not very familiar with the integrated or creating an integrated lesson. I know that one thing that I always start off in the beginning of the school year to try to teach the scientific method is to teach the popcorn experiment to my 5th graders.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to stop you. There is no one scientific method.
Scientific habits.
There are a whole range of types of scientific investigations that scientists use to learn about the natural world, okay? So if you have a scientific method poster in your classroom, please rip it down. It is incorrect.
Burn it.
All right? Now, going back, and let's just call it scientific methods for now, and then I'm actually going to do some training with you on this, so.
Okay. So, we try to teach the scientific methods, right? And we do that through a popcorn experiment because it's fun. Are y'all familiar with the popcorn experiment?
do tell.
Yeah, explain.
Really? Okay, the kids bring 4 or 5 different, usually 4 different brands of popcorn, Orville, Redenbacher, Pop Secret, whatever. We have 4 different brands. I break up the class into like 5 different groups. Each of them has the different brands, and we observe them and we make a hypothesis. Which one's going to pop the most kernels, which one's not, why, use all your senses, all that good stuff. And then we actually pop. Did I say something wrong?
No, I
No,
told, I told my students to listen because I'm gonna ask them a question.
Oh, okay. Okay, and so then we pop them and then we basically get together and we figure out how many kernels did pop, how many kernels didn't pop, and then we, we gather all of our information together and we, make data tables and then create bar graphs. So I was trying to figure out a way to integrate, the graphing part, because the students always have so much trouble graphing, period. They don't even know how to make a graph with this. But then, but the scope and sequence, as you said, that doesn't mesh, because in our scope and sequence, we always do graphing in the end of the year, not in the beginning of the year.
It is okay to do it in the beginning
You
of the
should be
year.
doing
Well,
graphing
if-
all year.
If they know the kind of graphing that is needed, remember the math has to be taught before it's used in the science. So you would assume that.
Yes.
Third grade.
Okay, so that would be in their prior knowledge, and
Yes.
they'd be using the math that already know.
Yeah.
They would be fine doing that, yeah.
Go ahead.
So that was I was just, wanting to find out if that would be a very good integrated lesson. Because this is like a different language.
Okay, what would be the characteristics that we would like to see in quote, an integrated lesson? If we came in and saw that, what would we like to see happen? This is a science-led lesson with using math, so what would we like the science teachers or this lesson what characteristics would we like to see?
Are you talking about like the learning goals and objectives, that part of it?
No.
Oh, okay,
The part that we think makes it integrated, not the general best practice.
okay,
Okay, not you, your colleagues.
okay.
Y'all's turn.
Help me out.
Well, would you, the
What?
graphing,
Okay, hold on, Brenna, what?
The math terms or terminology, because in science, when you create like just a table for information in science, I really don't focus a whole lot on what we put where and then where we put it on the graph, but in math it matters. And this year, just like the thing you showed us, in 5th grade, we have to, explain that in math, that it does matter where you put things. So to go ahead and instill that in science as well, and then whenever we get to that in math or whatever, they'll already understand that it is important to,
Okay, so
It would be
in a
a
couple
good
of
choice
words,
to
in a
use the
couple
word
of
bar
words.
graph.
Well, yeah.
If you know, because, but sometimes she'll ask her kids to make a graph, and what was it, they made a bar graph and you wanted a line graph, right?
No, they just,
Or they-
like, they
I
were just
remember
not understanding how to take
She
the data
asked them to
table
make a
and
graph,
put it in.
They
Yeah.
have no
Like,
idea.
it's one of those things that
And-
seems so simple to me.
but I'm like, well, I mean, because there's all different types of graphs. There's line graphs, bar graphs, circle graphs, and histograms, so, I would like to see you use the word bar graph.
Well, heads up, you've got a graphing lesson instruction going on, and we actually have a handout that's used for it, that kind of cheat sheet.
And one of the things I do wanna mention is, one thing I figured out is you have to do it the way they do it in math. Like, you kinda have to start that now. Like, if they're making graphs, cause they're gonna make a lot more graphs in math. And if you're bringing them to science, they might not always look the same as they do in math, cause I know sometimes my bar graphs are a little different, cause if we have different data sets and different, sorry, it's
Like
summer,
a
I'm on vacation.
double bar graph, what do you
Like when we have different trials, when you do multiple trials of a certain experiment, so your graph might look a little different than what they're used to, but you're still starting 0, 0, you've got x-axis, you've got y-axis, independent variable, dependent variable.
Scaling,
Whichever.
Scaling is very
yes, you can't just do well, this
How you run
bag
this
popped 105, so I'm gonna go 105, this bag popped 110, so I go 105, 110, this bag popped 230, and have the same, the
Yeah.
scaling. Oh, and you don't even know how much you're helping them, thank you, for algebra. And ultimately, we all want to get them ready for algebra. Because if you understand algebra, you're smarter, period.
Okay, I wanna go back to my original question. I'm an Aggie, so I like to keep things simple. Whoop, that's right, Jen and I are Aggies. And science and why. in 2 or 3 key words, what did Brenna say was an indicator of an integrated lesson that we would like to see if we came into this lesson?
Bar graph?
No,
Okay.
more generic than that. What?
Vocabulary.
The proper
Proper.
math vocabulary.
Okay.
The proper disciplined vocabulary. So if we're looking at in a science classroom, we would like to see if the math is being used, the proper math vocabulary. What else is a characteristic that we would like to see when we go in to see this lesson? So the proper math vocabulary,
Science vocabulary?
for an integrated lesson.
Oh, integrated.
This is the integrated.
Well, I guess an explanation between the differences, if there's similar terms, because that seems to be a
Well,
problem
that's
as well.
true, and that's kind of a dictionary. I wasn't thinking that so much, because that didn't come up all the time. The proper math vocabulary is gonna be there all the time. We do not want to see the science teacher teaching math. You teach all of it, but,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm like,
but,
whoa.
okay, there's a difference for fifth
Yeah,
grade
for
versus
sure.
middle school. And we don't want to see the science teacher teaching math tricks, because it undermines conceptual understanding. That's why that conversation between the math and the science teacher is important. So that as a science teacher, I'm not teaching math tricks.
Like the
Yeah.
triangle, right? Somebody, weren't we just having that conversation during STEM week? Somebody was, I don't remember who I was talking about, it was a math teacher who was saying those little triangle things that we teach the kids, like the M,
Is that chicken?
like density, I'm trying to think of density.
Yeah.
Or like speed, you know, with the S and then the D and then the T, and if you pulled it a certain way, I've never used the triangles, but one of the math teachers, it was physics, I'm sorry, you weren't at that table, my bad. It was the, I remember, sorry, it's been a month. The physics teacher was saying that those are real nice little tricks maybe when you're in middle school, but she says the second they get up into physics and geometry and all these other classes where they're using those concepts, the kids are like, but wait, I don't get it, and they don't understand
Because
it,
they
it
don't
actually makes it
understand it
harder.
conceptually.
Yeah, she has
That's
to
why
completely
you don't
unteach it.
start with the concrete, the hands-on, make sure they understand it conceptually before you move on. You have undermined their whole algebraic thinking, their performance in high school. I mean, it is just so critical what KA does.
It's like the butterfly method for fractions.
That would be,
And there's some kind of chicken something that elementary teachers do.
The butterfly method
Is it?
for determining whether fractions are equivalent to each other or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Don't be doing those tricks.
no, they're horrible.
Which one?
Them to figure it
All right, so I have a question for the science teacher here.
Every time? Okay, sorry.
I have a question for the science teacher here. So they're testing the 4 different types of popcorn, of which pops faster or something.
Which one pops the most kernels?
Okay, which of the has the highest percentage of kernels popping? Okay. So my question is, which one's your control?
Unless you were to take all of Orville Redenbacher's types of different types of popcorn.
Well, it would be a comparative investigation, it's not an experimental investigation.
You weren't supposed to answer
I'm
that.
sorry.
That's why I was sitting here going,
Well, your control.
Jen, you're supposed to be on the same wavelength as Dr. West.
No, that's.
You did say science
She's
teacher.
I
exactly,
wasn't sure which one.
that she's exactly right. Because the type of investigation that you're talking about with this popcorn, you have no control.
Right.
You are keeping all of the variables the same, except the different brands of popcorn.
What about the time that you pop the popcorn, the
has to be the same.
microwave?
That would be
The
the
same
That's
brands,
because
different
like
times.
it was
That's
control
variable, that's, don't, stop using control except one way and you won't be confused.
But you have to say controlled variable.
No, you have to say keeping all the variables the same except the one you're testing. Okay?
That's what I
If
tell
you
my
have a
students.
control, I'm gonna take y'all around and show you some real science investigations in the hallway. We have these posters, and I'll show you the difference between comparative, which is what you're doing, which is what Jim was talking about. Comparative. Some people call it correlational. It's not really, because correlational is a subset of comparative data analysis versus an experiment that has a control. So try to get the term, the verb controlling all the variables out of your vocabulary, and you won't be as confused. And we'll go into this later. Okay. So, good question. Anybody else have a good question? I know somebody else did.
I had the second condition.
Huh?
Did they give the second condition for unintegrated? They talked about vocabulary.
Yeah, we talked about all three.
Yes. Yeah, no
What
three.
else?
Not teaching math, if you're a science teacher.
Yeah,
Not teaching a subject.
well, maybe using science equipment. You don't always have to. Are you talking about the math manipulatives? It's a science lesson.
Well, using math manipulatives and science equipment in math.
Right. Yes.
I don't know if this has anything to do with what we're talking about, but you want us to write a lesson plan,
Yes.
and do you want us to, you know, fifth grade, when we begin the school year, our kids are we're gonna have to revisit some fourth grade. Right, so should we plan for safety, since safety is the first thing in science, so we would do a lesson plan over safety? So is that what you want us to do, is to take our first 3 weeks of lesson planning to, okay,
Absolutely not.
okay,
And I am the safety queen.
okay.
I am. I have the only safety research in the nation in science classroom. Okay, so you have to do some safety instruction at first.
Okay,
How to use the eye wash, how to exit the room, where do you go when there's a fire, you know, there's some basics they have to know.
right,
If you try to teach them exactly how to pour those crystals and be all careful with all that safety stuff, and then they don't do it for 6 weeks later, they're not gonna remember that.
okay.
So you only teach them up front what they need to know immediately. It's called in the business world, just in time. So you give them the information they need right when they're ready to just like when do you want to know about planning the lesson plan? It's when you have to do it, correct? Okay?
Right.
So that's a way, the real law. In my opinion, it's a waste of time to have 3 weeks of safety training. And I have a course that I teach, it's 24 hours of safety training. So there's a lot of safety that you can teach and should teach, but it should not be concentrated like that for your kids, because they don't care.
Same with like giving them a whole bunch of vocabulary in front.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, it's like giving vocabulary up front, yeah.
Well, the number one
Overkill.
safety
Yeah,
is tell your
so
teacher.
think about what, that you have to do initially,
Okay,
okay? And I guess the other tip that I was thinking about with your lesson, if I were you, I'd spend your time planning on something you're gonna do the first 6 weeks. Maybe the
Yeah.
first week even,
Like a cool
Yeah.
yeah, I would.
That's what because I know I almost always do something kind of like the popcorn thing. I always find something where they have to graph, because I want to make sure they're graphing the first week. I do an investigation that requires them to use the term variable and talk about the different types of investigations. And so we always do something simple. They might have even done something similar in the past, because I've had kids, oh, I've done this before. I'm like, great, so this time we're going to be doing this, this, and this, adding to it, and kind of bringing it up a little bit, depending on which level you're teaching, because graphing is, to me,
And even if
The
your
hardest
scope
thing
and
to match.
sequence has graphing at the end, you should be graphing all year long. It doesn't matter if it's at the end. Take a look at what they're really specifying at the end and what they want the kids to know, and that should be something that you can do all year long
Yeah,
with your graphing.
But you have to have explicit instruction on it.
If they don't know how to,
You
you
can't
can
just
assume
say-
they know how to read graphs and they just do not.
Right.
We have college seniors who do not know how to do that. And in fact, I asked Brownie, I said, when do students learn about the difference between continuous and discrete data? She said 8th grade in the old TEKS. Where is it in the revised TEKS? Discrete and continuous data. Okay, those are
I think
questions.
it's still there in eighth.
You think it's still there in eighth? Those are the kind of things that you want to think about. I mean, that's how you know what kind of graph to
What
do.
type of graph to
Is to
have.
know what kind of data. You have to characterize your data, whether it's
Right.
discrete or continuous
Well,
data.
we fifth grade.
Covered a little bit in fifth grade.
Okay, look in your revised piece. Talk about that later. Okay, other questions? Other ideas? Anybody have ideas about things to think about?
You know, you mentioned to introduce math before science, or to make sure that they're
Not introducing
not
that.
introduce it, but to understand,
Teach it.
to teach it. So should I say to play it safe, I guess, to make a lesson with math, using math, you know, making sure they understand their multiplication, believe it or not, adding and subtracting, how to borrow, and those are very basic, but they don't remember, a lot of them don't remember how to even do that.
And the question would be,
Well, as far
why
as.
not? What is it, what's happening? And that should be a conversation among all your teachers.
Are they using base 10 blocks?
Ma'am?
Are they using base 10 blocks to regrouping? And that's what you need to find out. If you're not teaching
And you need
base 10
to-
blocks, then they're not gonna understand regrouping.
Because
And
we
you
have
need
to
to
start.
there needs to be a conversation with your principal about this. That same comment that Sandy just made. If they don't understand this, if they're not using base 10 blocks or whatever
Right.
manipulative it should be. And he should be, it is our job to train him to look for that when he goes into the classroom, the fourth grade classroom. No, here's the.
Yes. Estrada, Mr.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, other questions? How many of you have a math scope and sequence for next year? So,
We don't have it.
three of you?
We don't have it.
You don't have, I mean, some districts haven't, they haven't.
We just got new curriculum, and so we just met a month ago, and we got halfway through our scope and sequence.
We're not in curriculum, we got new teeth, so we're
Yeah.
writing the curriculum. 'Cause-
Well, now, there's a difference though between writing curriculum and writing a scope and sequence.
well,
Writing a
writing
scope and
the-
sequence, you do
Scope and sequence.
how that long? An hour, a day,
Yeah.
a week? A
It's
day?
a scope and
Well,
sequence.
we were
If you
also
need
having to look at STAR.
No, how long would it take them to write the district scope and sequence?
With the revised text, it's gonna take longer than,
How long?
I would say 2 days.
Okay, so a couple of days to write it, brainstorming. If you're doing it by yourself, it'll probably take a lot less.
We
So
don't
does
have
your
to
district, what did y'all use last year is kind of my question.
envision.
But, so you just
No.
basically went
We have one, a scope and sequence.
from last year?
Yeah,
Because I know in Northeast, not that they're the end all be all, because they're not, they have their problems, but they're not reinventing the wheel. They're using kind of the pace that we used last year,
right.
and then they're putting in, because the pace we had last year, based on the pace